Now remember, in India, Hikvision is operating through a tie-up with a company called Hikvision, which is a leader in the video surveillance and solution space. It's a company based out of Gujarat, and they have a 500 crore rupee investment. Now, some part of the assembly happens in India, but it's a Chinese company and it's being looked at with serious suspicion in the United States, in Europe. Are we comfortable with the idea of having a Chinese company potentially? Now remember, whether this can be done or not isn't known for certain, and about that there must be absolute clarity. But given how China views privacy, given how they're using facial technology, and given what's happening at the line of control, it is an alarm that needs to be raised, which is why we're putting this on the Newstrack tonight. Joining me for perspective on this broadcast, I want to welcome first leading cybersecurity expert Jitin Jain. With us on this broadcast also is Rohan Gupta, representing the Congress party. We have Inar Tenjen from Beijing and Rajiv Pratap Rudy from the BJP. Jitin Jain, I want to come to you first. Spell out and explain to our viewers why you think that having a company like Hikvision, along with Huawei, about which there's so much chatter, Hikvision is the second company which is in the radar globally because of its close proximity with the Chinese establishment. What are the kind of security concerns cyber experts like you have? What should India be wary of, and how should we be approaching this situation? Jitin.
Well, no doubt, Hikvision is a global leader in the video surveillance technologies, and they have, really good AI solutions. They are also not only they are selling the cameras, they are also selling the video surveillance drones for monitoring railway stations, VVIP places and stuff. So, it's a huge Pandora of catalog they have, which cater to different requirement of video surveillance, requirements. But the problem is, this concern of Hikvision being granted tenders to install CCTV camera in Delhi was raised 2 years earlier also, but people did not pay much heed to it because we were not facing with China what we are facing today. But you have to understand, all these companies like Huawei, ZTE, Hikvision, these are not private companies. These are all Chinese government state-owned machineries, and trying to project themselves and camouflage as private companies. You would be surprised to know that Hikvision itself has, this is the part of how Chinese propaganda machine works, how the hold of communist parties there on this thing. The chairman of, Hikvision is a very senior member of Communist Party. They had few years back formed an internal Communist Party committee within the company. The chairman is also the secretary of regional Communist, Party committee. This company, the ownership is 42% is owned by the state-controlled Chinese companies. Now, what else do you want? You have Chinese community, Communist Party members running these companies. You have state-owned ownership. Then, and you very well know that, there is no government in China. It is party, government, army, everything is one. It's a gang of all thugs and naxals. And then these companies come up in, in the market with, flamboyant campaigns, pumping a lot of money. They offer cheap gadgetry, which is not, other companies are not able to compete. And behind this cheap gadgetry and innovative solutions lies a very strongly backed Chinese government's large surveillance empire. Now, what will happen in Delhi? The question is whether Chinese government can access your videos or not. That is the primary question.
No, but we don't know the answer to that, because when we put out this story, one second, just hear me out, because we asked representatives from Hikvision to come and join us. That didn't happen, but they sent us some sense of what the thinking there is. They're saying that there is no way that anyone in China can access what's happening in Delhi or South Block or North Block in a worst case scenario, because the fear is that when the Prime Minister is coming out of his office, heading out, the President's going, if you've got CCTV cameras there or elsewhere, then there is a possibility that the Chinese establishment may be able to monitor that. But they're saying that the survey, that the servers are based here, it's an Indian tie-up, and therefore no one in the Chinese military has access to any of this footage. Would you buy that kind of explanation and argument, Jitin?
I don't know which illiterate technical guy you spoke to. I think he must be a bot of Chinese propaganda activist. But let me tell you very clearly, not every camera could be accessed. If you have installed a standalone camera and you're only watching it your internal DVR server, fine, I agree, it may not be accessible from outside. But the CCTV cameras we are installing at our homes, the CCTV cameras which Mr. Kejriwal is planning to install across the city, they would all be connected. And you and me, let me give you a very practical example. 10 years ago, somebody will buy a CCTV camera and the recording will happen on DVR. These days, you also have an app You have Wi-Fi cameras, you have these cameras connected over internet, and using that app, you can watch the feed anywhere, anytime. These are smart cameras, and when you connect the entire city on one common network with thousands and thousands of camera, if anybody has access to that network, be it for maintenance, be it for monitoring, or be it the genuine access, if they have access, and most of these companies, say the routers which were given by Huawei 3 years back, they all had a backdoor, they all had an admin password which were only known to Huawei. Likewise, if these companies have an admin password or a backdoor, it will never be known to an Indian subsidiary. I mean, take the example of WeChat. The Indian office was only doing marketing. They did not have an iota of idea about the code. UC browser, UC News, they don't even control the editorial rights. That is all dictated from China. Huawei, do you know what is there inside the phone? Do you know the embedded operating systems code? No. These are all marketing fronts to camouflage themselves as Indian companies, enter into JVs and project them as Indian companies so that they can get tenders. Trust me, Rahul, if you are a technical guy, unless and until it is an isolated camera running on a standalone setup, any camera which is connected on internet, these companies will be able to access.
Okay, so now this is a very serious problem. But what's the view in the government?
Any company.
I want to go across to Rajiv Pratap Rudy and put that question to him, because the spectre of CCTV cameras in the national capital and elsewhere somehow having a feed which goes back to Beijing, or if things go south along the LAC, suddenly people in the PLA can start monitoring what's happening, is like a nightmare scenario. Ordinarily, we may not have been so suspicious, but after what's happened along the LAC, every single question needs to be asked threadbare. How concerned are you, Mr. Rudy, that a company that's been viewed with a lot of suspicion in Europe and the United States is the company that's supplying these cameras in the national capital, is the cheapest vendor available elsewhere as well, and therefore can spread its penetration? After what we did with apps, 59 Chinese apps being banned, do you think that ambit needs to be expanded? Rajiv Rudy.
Well, I understand your question, but I will have to call it myopic in the sense that when we have to look at China and the exposure of China, whether it's in electronics, whether it is in CCTV cameras, whether it is in telephones, whether it's the television sets which you are watching your show, they are all around us. And in that situation, if you say that in today's world they would be relying exclusively for spying on the cameras which are installed in Delhi or maybe at any other place, is possibly saying that that is the sole source of information which is going to China, or for that matter anywhere else, with the GPS, with the internet, with the satellite surveillance. I don't think this would be an issue.
Not really, sir. Mr. Rudy, with respect. Mr. Rudy, with respect. One second, sir.
Mr. Miller, like last, I'll put a question.
Okay.
Just a second, I'll conclude it. My only submission is, if you look at it, if you're talking about CCTV cameras, are we planning to put a pause button on everything, not only CCTV cameras, pause button that it's all over for us? Is anyone in the system capable of answering this question? Then possibly I would be in a better position to answer your question.
You're saying that CCTV cameras don't pose as much of a risk because that same information can be garnered from satellites. That's not really correct, because satellites go over a certain area, say for example once in the day, so they'll take some pictures. As they go past that area, it doesn't happen on a real continuing basis. With CCTV cameras, you've got real-time access. Wherever that camera is placed, you've got real-time access. Whoever has access to the server can monitor whatever's happening in that patch on a real-time basis. Does that not alarm you, Mr. Rudy?
Well, let's not threaten the nation with these kind of stories and say that I have discovered this morning that these cameras are going to bring peril to the nation, and then we make a story and say, oh, it's very serious and everything is compromised. I think it's calling too much.
It's not a story.
I think it's too much of a story to break and say that this is a revelation.
Okay,
it's a revelation. I think this we are going too far. I would not agree. Let's be intelligent enough to answer many things, and if you pose questions to me about a camera which has become a national peril and the Chinese are watching us through this camera and that everything is gone topsy-turvy, let's be more practical.
So you're saying be practical, don't be paranoid.
And we are all appreciated.
Yes, we are looking at what's happening. This is where I want to bring Rohan Gupta. Mr. Rudy's message primarily is we need to be practical. You can't be paranoid. These cameras have been around Yes, it's true that Europe and the United States are looking at this company with suspicion, but we don't really know if the PLA has any access, and if we start thinking like this, we'll never be able to function. Rohan Gupta.
Rahul, I don't blame Mr. Rudy, as this practical approach of BJP towards China has landed the country in this situation. We now see that China, your reports are only saying that China has intruded in our country, and the whole BJP and Prime Minister are silent. This is the important point is, we just heard one of the experts, and he was very clear that when you are on this CCTV cameras, the output can go there. Now, Mr. Rudy, he is not a super expert. Let us not at least argue in the technical aspect. There is a huge threat. Absolutely, we have to agree. And as Rahul initially told, that after what China has done, and I think he has broken the confidence also of Mr. Modi, because he is one of the Prime Minister of India who has tried to trust China, but I think they have backstabbed him badly. Today, what's happening across border, across the nation? My point here is, if you see, Rahul, in 2014, the share of Indian mobile phones, the Indian manufacturer in Indian market was 45%. Today, that has increased to 81%. One of the gentlemen on your panel, he told that yes, you never know. If the code is embedded even in mobile, the data can go there. So the threat is much bigger and much wider than what we are thinking. It's not about being practical here. We have to think about our country. Maybe your party can forget and have a lighter note for China, but country cannot trust China anymore. Whether it is border, whether it is
if
about
China
data,
hadn't
you have to take a holistic approach now.
And betrayed India's interest along the line of actual control, maybe this would have been paranoia. However, there's a 2019 report which says 42% of Hikvision is controlled by state enterprises, with the China Electronic Technology Group, HIK, owning 40%. And Hikvision is, look at how Donald Trump is treating the company. Look at how Europe is treating the company. There are very, very serious concerns about Huawei, about Hikvision, about ZTE, and therefore, if you are not paranoid, I question that. At this moment, anyone who says "Sab changa hai ji, no problem hai ji," that's the attitude that needs to be questioned, Mr. Rudy. This is not paranoia. You need to be smart about these things.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rudy?
Well, Rahul, I am not as smart as the people who run the system, or as smart as you all say. And we have got this wisdom today to tell how China has to be dealt, because overnight, after what happened in Balwan and after that incident, we all have become very conscious and want to tell the country how we should be dealing with China. I can actually say that I do not have that kind of a wisdom to tell how we have to deal with China, but all this electronic, 80% of your electronic market is captured by China. And you want to say, get over with it. So tomorrow you'll have another story with, say, TVs, and I think what we discuss.
So there's a big difference. You're trivializing the matter.
Chinese are watching me here.
Televisions and live CCTV camera feeds are totally different.
Yeah, but no, Mr. Rohan Gupta, I understand what you're talking, and the trade or these trades which are happening in this country did not begin when Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister.
He's asking you a question that be practical.
No, you are not a moderator.
What he's talking.
Okay, one second. Don't let the conversation not degenerate. One second. Rohan Gupta's fader goes down. Let Mr. Rudy speak. Whether you agree with what he's saying or not, allow Mr. Rudy to complete what he's saying, please.
No, my only small request is, whenever these spokesperson of the Congress speak, I have not uttered a word, and they start interfering and tutoring me what I have to. Please, when you speak, whatever you speak, I never speak a word. So at least have that kind of magnanimity when we speak. Now, if you look at the trade which grew with China, do you look at the trade figures which grew from 1991 to the trade with China, whether it's television, whether it's automotives, whether it is chemicals, whether it is other equipments, whether it is toys, did not start yesterday. It started, and mostly after the reforms in 9, there were at least 80 odd agreements and business deals, and which have said that we are going ahead with it. Now the country has taken a decision, and possibly that decision will take another 20 years to implement. How do we have to handle China? And it is not going to happen overnight. So this wisdom which people have gathered overnight, and possibly the Congress spokesperson who come on the television, they are so happy about what is happening in China, but they do not remember the fact which they signed with a political party, signed with the Communist Party of China, which no one in India has ever done, whether Samajwadi Party, these people, you see, if you become very happy, and I'm talking to many of the spokespersons of the Congress Party, and they're all very pragmatic when they say, yes, it is a challenge, we have to move on, but if you want to say this Mr. Modi who has done this, and Mr. Rudy who has done it, I think people who are watching clearly understand that you are trivializing the discussion of saying that the CCTV cameras across the country are now endangering the entire national security is something very bizarre.
Okay.
Let's be practical.
No, let's go across. Let's go across now. One second, sir.
Now you say, let
Jitin Jain. Let Jitin Jain, sir.
What happened?
Let Jitin Jain.
Someone who knows the subject, please
Yes,
ask them to
Jitin
guide
Jain
us.
is an
Someone
expert. One second.
Not politicians are going to answer.
Jitin Jain.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy says this is paranoia. The Department of Defense 2 days ago in the United States declared that Hikvision was amongst the companies that was backed by the Chinese military. Is the DOD in the United States being paranoid, or is any such concern a demonstration of paranoia which says that you need to be careful? Jitin Jain.
Hello.
Go on, Jitin.
Yeah. I'm saying US Department of Defense has labeled 20 companies, including Huawei, Hikvision, as companies which are directly controlled or directly, influenced by PLA, Chinese army, not the Chinese government, to be very clear. And they are not paranoid. They are very realistic. And what is bizarre is not the claims. What is bizarre is Mr. Rudy's arguments. And I think he's not been informed or briefed properly. And I'm 100% sure his own party leadership will not agree with him. I partially agree with him that not every camera can be snooped upon. But there are, and for Mr. Rudy, I can tell you, just go on internet and Google open camera. There are thousands of cameras which can be directly, accessed using default parts. So there are thousands of cameras for which exploits are available by the vendor. There are thousands of cameras which have had backdoors. So, I mean, are you trying to are you comfortable turning Delhi into a surveillance state? Come on, Mr. Rudy, satellite do not see which car is going inside which house. They don't watch the number plate of the car. They don't know who's sitting in it, watch car. And if you're that much comfortable with this Chinese company, why don't you offer Pakistan to install 10,000 cameras in Lahore and Islamabad? India will give it for free. Let us see if they allow. I mean, these are the same arguments these Chinese companies are giving. These are the same argument 10 years back these people were giving, that telecom sector is not a threat. Let us allow Huawei for 5G. How come they can snoop? Now this is not possible. I think this ill-informed decisions, this lack of understanding of subject is what is putting us in this problem. And this whole cycle, the more you allow them, the more dependencies will created. And I'll tell you what, Rahul, it is not only about cameras. It is also tomorrow they will offer AI-based facial recognition solutions. Do you think, are you comfortable with that?
Okay, Mr. Rudy, I'm quoting to you from a report that's been put out by the Department of Defense in the United States, which says the Communist Party of China has adopted a strategy of military-civilian fusion to achieve its national objectives, enlisting Chinese companies and universities to harness emerging civilian technologies for military purposes. Civilian-military fusion is CCP's blueprint for China's global return to military preeminence. Would Pakistan allow any Indian company to have CCTV cameras around Rawalpindi? Would they feel comfortable with that? How do you say this is paranoia, and why is it that you're not comfortable, that you're not feeling uncomfortable, Mr. Rudy?
Well, the planes which we fly, the trains which we run through on the tracks, the electricity, the bulbs, the generators, all Chinese are all around us. I'm not an expert on the subject, and I have to scout what Mr. Jitin Jain is talking as if I'm a protagonist of China and that I have some brand which I'm selling there or selling here. It's not like that, my dear. I'm a politician. And if there are people on these subjects, if someone has to tell with authenticity, they have to tell us, and it could be the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry or the concerned people who know the threat posed by it. Not politicians who come on the television channel, and if you tell me that I'm not exposed, actually I'm not exposed, because I find that all of a sudden this morning we come about cameras, tomorrow morning there would be another subject about tires which are running the car, and there would be engines which are also bugged, and there would be doors which are bugged, and there are lights which are bugged, and so many things can turn up because by touch we can find, there is artificial intelligence. I am not an expert, boss, and you want to tell me that, Mr. Rudy, you don't know the subject. I really do not know the subject. But what I understand as an average understanding is this has been there, and if there is a threat, and if you feel that this surveillance is actually creating havoc for the country, I'm sure there are people in the system, the the defense systems, the analysts, the RAW, the IB. Let them
But
decide.
Mr. Rudy, with a lot of respect, sir,
bugged about our information.
Sir, surveillance possibilities are very different from
and on this subject.
Tires. And you can't compare surveillance systems with tires.
Rudy wants to compare mobile.
So I will not be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rudy. You know, you want to compare car tires.
I don't
with the
know
cameras
what these gentlemen are talking.
What are you talking?
Okay.
No, I don't want to compare anything. My understanding is not fitting into place by when people say that whole country is endangered because cameras have been installed. So this is beyond my understanding. Those brilliant people who think and explain to the nation that the cameras in the country which are installed has now the Prime Minister's house, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and my house, and everyone is under peril of China, and that they are good. So there's some crazy concept coming up, Rahul, in your television show. I'm not competent to answer that. I am not competent to answer these crazy questions.
Fair enough. Rahul,
you cannot put the country in a situation where you started. I have to find out what Mr. Jitendra, what interest does he have in all these things that he's become an expert? Does he have a brand
Jiten Jain, okay, you're being accused of having a commercial stake in the game.
I have to find out about this gentleman. Does he?
Okay, 1 second. Let Jiten respond to that.
Find out what kind of a conversation he's building up. What company do you
who roam around the street of Delhi who will be surveilled upon? You are VIP.
No, these are the words you all understand.
No, come on. Come on.
Let him speak. Jiten, go on.
Now I have to look into Delhi University.
You have to defend this Chinese company.
I have to find out about this gentleman.
No, if you're not expert, then why are you coming here?
Now he's gone crazy. Now he's gone crazy.
No, 1 second. No, this debate is degenerating. It's a very sensitive issue. 1 second. Both traders go down. Both traders go down. 1 second, sir. This is a very, very serious matter. The prospect of a Chinese company having a live feed access to sensitive installations is a serious matter of national security. It cannot be trivialized.
Look at his face.
One second. All faders down, please. Now, Jiten Jain, you're being accused of having a commercial interest in a non-Chinese brand. That's a serious charge that's being flung your way. So I'm going to allow you to respond, and Inar Tenjan is listening very peacefully. I need to go across to him as well. First, Jiten Jain.
First of all, I want to show you a photo. This is the president and chairman of Hikvision sitting in a Chinese Communist Party committee meeting. I don't know, Mr. Rudy would now say that this is available in open source. This is available on Chinese websites. So now coming on the point that I have an interest. I have an interest in India, and I have huge interest. I'm telling you, I have a huge interest in Indian companies, and I want every Chinese companies to be thrown out. Is that a problem? But I want to tell you, Mr. Rudy, I do not have a product. I do not have a product to sell. I don't have an app to sell. I'm an independent consultant. I run my own startup, and I don't care. And I don't have a political interest, unlike you, who wants to run some brownie points and get back into the system. So do not park personal remarks if you don't even know. Have you ever met me? Do you know about me? Then what are you talking about? You will speak any trash on the channel, and people will listen. Come on.
Yeah, Mr. Jiten Jain, you come on, please don't get angry and go, why are you so red-faced? Why is it so hurt? Why is it hurt when I have challenged your knowledge, and possibly when such people talk about a brand product?
Jiten, now let him answer. Jiten Jain's fader goes down.
When you want.
You've made some points, now listen to Mr. Rudy.
You see, my only submission, Mr. Jiten Jain, you challenged my presence here. I only said that I am absolutely confused because someone who is so vehement about talking about a situation and telling the nation that this particular product is a Chinese product and why this tender has been given and the whole camera, then it becomes very suspicious. Till yesterday, why didn't you come on channel and say these cameras are terrible? Today, because China is, because the government is. Please listen. Why don't you should when you come on the television, my friend.
No, 1 second, Jiten Jain. Okay, 1 second. I know that tempers are running high. Jiten, you made a point. Listen to Mr. Rudy, and then I'll come back to you.
My friend Mr. Jiten Jain, we come here for a discussion, and I told you very candidly that I do not know much, but the only submission is, Mr. Jiten Jain, you have a history of being a cyber analyst. Why didn't you tell the country, the world, that these cameras which have been fitted in Delhi
that's a good point. The ownership structure of Hikvision has been the same when the tenders went out.
Why this today?
Why are these concerns being raised now? Let Jiten Jain respond to that. Okay, now let Jiten Jain respond to that. Jiten.
Rahul, you can take out
And I would have agreed, boss. I'm not disagreeing. This is dangerous.
Now, can I reply, Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Can I reply, Mr. Rudy? You can take out my
Yes.
my interviews in different and send you hundreds of articles. In the last 10 years, I have taken positions against every foreign company indulging in the critical sector of India, anything which is suspicious. Not only Hikvision, Huawei, ZTE, TikTok. You know, I have a history of reports against the Chinese companies. So please do not question my integrity and competence, because you are a politician. You are habitual to questioning each other's integrity. Unlike you, we don't trade baths. But for your knowledge, I can tell you that even if I'm raising a question today, is it wrong? The question does not have merit? That should be the question you should be answering.
Inarthan Jan is listening to this debate. Inarthan Jan, after what's happened with 59 Chinese apps, to the mind of any sensible person who's aware of how advanced tech works, companies like Hikvision, companies like Huawei are a security nightmare. What's your sense sitting in Beijing about the prospect of the security nightmare playing itself out, where the PLA, a company whose management is directly a part of the Chinese Communist Party, having access to CCTV cameras in sensitive Indian installations? Inarthan Jan.
Well, I don't think that hysterical paranoia is the way to address this, nor is this kind of nativist attitude that's done. In terms of the technical issues, it's very, very simple. If anybody has the keys to your system, they can get in. It doesn't really matter what camera or system that you're using. If they're inside your system, they have access to it. In terms of having information broadcast to China, I'm afraid that your technical expert seems woefully uninformed. Quite frankly, all you have to do is require that any information coming out of those cameras has to be processed in India. And in fact, countries have required that. That's what the US has done. That's what Europe has done. They said that there has to be the components and everything has to be done there. In terms of the US and these newfound allegations, quite frankly, there was a report by, it was a political paper, the O'Donnell and Associates report, that said that for political purposes, Donald Trump's best chance of being reelected was to attack China and anything associated with China, not to defend the administration or the problems that they're having, but to attack it. And I think this is clearly part of that, because if you take a list of all the companies that are outpacing their US competitors in 5G, AI, and facial recognition, you'll find that those are the ones that are on the list that are being blacklisted by the
Jitin Jain, you want to respond to this? The overwhelming view in China is because they're beating American companies in artificial intelligence, in automation, in 5G, which is why America is raising the specter of this technological conspiracy, and it's got to do with American politics. How do you respond to that, Jitin?
Rahul, you see, whoever will dominate the 5G field and the telecommunication field will dominate the intelligence world for the next 40 years. And this is an open secret, well known to all. Now, why US Department of Defense has banned these companies now? Is there is a political interest? Is there is economic interest? Might be. And everybody has to compete. But we have to talk about the allegations, what FBI has filed in the charges in US courts, that how Huawei took away the patented glass of American company. Despite of legally bound of not sending it outside their office, they sent it to China. They kept it there for 20 days. The glass was broken. So there are a variety of allegations against these companies. Now, if you have, and this is not one company, there are leagues of Chinese companies who have been accused of espionage. So if he was to tell me that Chinese companies are all monks and saints, and US is paranoid because they are losing economically for AI and they are doing it for economic interest, I think the world can buy your propaganda.
But there is a big difference, when an order is given to an Apple,
Indians very well understand your designs and ambitions.
And here is where, Rohan Gupta, viewers really need to understand the context. When there is a government order in the United States against Apple or Facebook, they very often push back. Here is a very different scenario where the owner of these companies is a part of the Communist Party. In any case, any Chinese company under Chinese law has to do whatever the government there wants. You cannot compare Chinese companies and how they are run and their administration with American companies. Rohan Gupta will come in.
I fully agree with you, Rahul. And see, the discussion today is for the country. It's a very serious discussion. And I'm surprised that the way Mr. Rudy talks to an expert, I think this is not done. You need to understand, you need to respect what he's saying. And I think overall Mr. Rudy's approach explains the approach of this government of over-trusting China. I gave you one example, and Huawei, it's directly owned by PLA. How can you trust them? They have betrayed us. They have been betraying us for last 6 years. Our balance of trade has gone in favor of China in last 6 years. It is now $51 billion. So I think somewhere this government needs to understand, in case of the strategical things, in case of the data security, in case of intelligence or army intelligence, you have to be very careful. You cannot overtrust China. It's not question of being paranoid. It's question of India's security. And the way Mr. Jain, hats off to Mr. Jain, I am really happy to see a common Indian raising the voice. And the way you have represented, it's not about, talking against BJP or Modi government. It's about talking about the country. We need to understand that China is the bigger threat, and we cannot trust China anymore.
That I wish you are paranoid. Don't accuse the likes of Jitin Jain of paranoia. Instead, I would want that everyone be paranoid. If there is even the possibility of the People's Liberation Army having access to feed from Delhi cameras, let's explore that. Let's investigate. Cyber experts have raised this threat. We've taken it up on the Newstrack probe it. Maybe it's untrue.
Rahul,
maybe it's true that all CCTV cameras, the servers don't go. But for example, very frequently in defense armaments, the companies that sell the weapons have kill switches, which means that if it goes against the strategic interest of the country that sold that weapon, sometimes that weapon system may not work. There is realms that's been written about such scenarios. This should be probed. It cannot be dismissed. And yes, at this moment, given what's happening at the line of actual control, everyone, Mr. Rudy, needs to be paranoid.
Rahul, just one comment.
No, 1 second. Let him speak first. Let Mr. Rudy speak. I'll come to you later.
Can I come in? You see, I could have been wrong in positioning myself, and but someone on the panel said that someone who made Mr. Jain who said, someone said he's woefully uninformed. I don't know, and when someone says who is an expert whom you have called on the television channel, there is an audience who will also believe that there are panelists who are woefully uninformed. I never claimed that I was an expert. So to my understanding, when there is a camera, and the gentleman said so, that all these cameras do not have a satellite link to the Chinese army and their intelligence agencies. All this is actually going off my head. These are the jobs, and these answers are best posed to individuals who know the subject. How much of intelligence can be gathered and leaked? This is not a subject of a politician.
Cameras don't work through satellites. So the feed goes into servers. Who controls the servers? That's the question.
Whatever.
Jitin wants to make a final point. I'm out of time, but in our...
I'm not
If
saying...
you don't know, then
fine.
please don't argue if you don't know, Mr. Rudy.
I said that why do you asked it? No, I'm not arguing. I'm saying that you have a knowledge of abundance, but I don't have an expert next to you who could counter you.
No, sure. So all that we're saying is, okay, final words. I'm running out of time.
So that's different.
In our tangent first, the People's Liberation Army and Xi Jinping should realize...
Server in your country.
No, 1 second, sir.
I stand by my things. Your expert is woefully uninformed. If you have concerns about the server, insist that the server is in your country. All right, so that ends that. I don't understand why this is going on. I understand it seems like you want to attack this Mr. Rudy because he's with the government. I think the government has to answer questions, but just attacking them on the basis that you want to create this kind of paranoid delusional stuff sounds a little bit odd.
Okay, if the servers are in India, then there is no fear, and that's what the statement from this company, Jitin Jain, says. That
Rahul,
we've done. No, 1 second. We must also be fair to the company. They're saying that. Oh, 1 second. That this is in tie-up with BEL. BEL was involved in the whole process, and that's how the tenders were processed. Secondly, that they've done their security checks. It's not as if they didn't think through this. They know that the servers are in India. Both Inar Tenjen and Mr. Rudy are accusing you of being completely woefully uninformed, paranoid. Secondly, if the servers are in India, then is it still a threat? Final words, Jitin Jain.
I'm happy that I've been called paranoid against China, but Rahul, I will tell you what, not every camera can be accessed. I said all the cameras which have any interface towards the internet or any network of these cameras which is directly or indirectly exposed to any outsider, be it by Wi-Fi hacking or be it by intrusion into a private network, or be it through an internet interface. Rahul, all of us, you, me, thousands of people who understand the subject, just go and Google sites like Shodan, just Google Hikvision cameras, you'll find thousands of cameras which are listed online with default passwords, exploits available. This is how it works. These are iPhones get hacked. They're also secure. So what I don't want to argue with Mr. Rudy, his understanding is, उनको मुबारक है, but मैं आपसे ये कहना चाहूँगा कि BEL may have thought through this. We have all used Chinese products in the past. We allowed Chinese apps to continue. We allowed Chinese company to build roads. But now Mr. Gadkari is saying they will not allow. We are banning Chinese apps because the environment has changed, because the threat perception has increased, because you understand you might go to a war with this country and they will use every means available at their disposal to surveil upon you. Now, if you want to live with that risk, fine. Otherwise, if I was at your place, I will not blame Aam Aadmi Party. I will not blame BJP or Congress. We all have to come together and do the course correction. We have to ensure that whatever cameras are remaining, they should not go to this Chinese company. And please do not take that this is an economic threat. It has huge security implications.
Are you
if you
a
do
lobbyist
not,
of some
if
company?
you have a different vision, so be it.
Jain,
This is my
I'm out of time. Mr. Rudy, I'm out of
some
time. So just 20 seconds.
Are you lobbying for some company?
Yes, Mr. Rudy, please file a case. Throw me out of the country.
Course,
I am not lobbying for any
Mr. Rudy, the whole country is watching you. Please control yourself, Mr. Rudy.
Relax. You are with Chinese.
You are with Chinese.
Mr. Jain.
Mr. Rudy, you are with Chinese.
With Chinese.
What are you talking about?
Why are you
Okay, this is going nowhere. Time out.
The way
Time out.
Mr. Rudy
Time
is
out.
talking
Let me
today.
have my 20
Not
seconds.
This is going nowhere. Here's what I want. There should be a thorough review of the security implications of having a company with direct links to the Communist Party, where the ownership structure is such that the Chinese government has very clearly established ownership in this company. We need to do a thorough review. Instead of catcalling each other, at a time when the threat of war looms large, there can be any morning we can wake up to the news that there's been a military escalation. At this time, if we are not paranoid, we are like ostriches with our heads buried in the sand. We simply cannot afford to be that. There's no point in an expert and the government fighting with each other in this fashion. Let's do a thorough review of every single aspect of our lives, especially when it comes to technology and surveillance, which has any Chinese connection. This is not about commercial interests, who wins or who loses. This is about putting India first, and that is absolutely critical. This is a fight China started. India will do every single thing that it can to stay safe. I want to thank Mr. Rajiv Rudy for coming and presenting the BJP's perspective, Rohan Gupta for coming and representing the Congress, Jitin Jain and Narthanjan for joining us on what I believe is an important story we need to look at very carefully. Don't be paranoid, but review and probe and then come to meaningful conclusions and figure out the roadmap going forward. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.